Hello and welcome to the channel. Are you ready to save hours in your week using Microsoft Excel? Millions of people do not leverage Microsoft Excel to its full potential. We are here to change that. In this video, we will go over 10 of the most important productivity hacks when using Excel. Let's start with Flash Fill. Here we're going to be leveraging some of Excel's pattern sensing technology to manipulate our data. Let's take a look at our data. In column A, we have a list of our salespeople with their first names, last names, and their sales amount all crammed into column A. Let's say we want to break this out into multiple columns. Now, in order to activate Flash Fill, we first need to demonstrate in Excel what pattern we want it to follow. The first thing we're going to do is click into cell B3 and type our first name Tony, followed by our last name Stark. And then for our sales, we're going to type 35,453. Now that we have one iteration of the pattern we want Excel to follow, we can engage the tool. Now there are two different ways to activate the Flash Fill tool. The first way is to navigate to the Data ribbon, and in the Data Tools segment, click on the Flash Fill button. That will follow the pattern and Flash Fill in the first names. The second option would be to use a shortcut. We can navigate into cell C4 and type Ctrl-E. This will flash fill the rest of the last names. For the sales amounts, it's your preference whether you would like to navigate to the Data ribbon and click on the Flash Fill button or use the shortcut. For this example, we will use the Ctrl-E shortcut, and that will flash fill all of our cells. As you can see, this is a very powerful tool. It can be especially very useful with CSV files when you have data that can follow along a pattern and break out the comma-separated values into multiple columns. Next is the Text to Columns tool. Here we have some department data, which is an example of a CSV file. CSV stands for a comma-separated values file. Essentially, what this means is this is an export from a system where it took all the different columns and combined them all into one column and separated it by commas. What we can do here is unpack this data and break it back out into separate columns, leveraging the Text to Columns tool. To use this tool, first we need to highlight the data that we want to separate out. We can click into cell A3 and use Ctrl-Shift-Down arrow key to highlight all the way down to the edge of our data set. Next, we're going to click on the Data ribbon, and in the Data Tools segment, there is the Text to Columns button. When we click on this button, it will bring up the Text to Columns wizard. Here you can see we have two different options. The bottom one is Fixed Width, which is a great option if we wanted to break the data by a set number of characters. However, in our case, we are going to leave it selected on Delimited. Delimited means that there is a delimiter, which is a way to say that there's a symbol, a character, a space, or something that Excel can use to identify and break out the different columns. Let's leave Delimited checked and click on Next. Here is where we select what our delimiter will be. By default, it has Tab checked. We can either type the letter T on our keyboard to uncheck it or manually click and uncheck it. Since we have a comma-separated values file, we will use a comma as our delimiter, and the shortcut for that is the letter C on the keyboard. We can keep an eye here on the data preview. When we click and unclick the letter C, you can see what the different columns will look like with this data preview. Next, we click on the Finish button. And there we have it. We just took our data from column A and separated it by the commas into each of our different columns. Next is one of my favorite data cleaning techniques. Using the Go to Special, we can clean up some data. Here we have some shipping data that includes blank rows scattered throughout. Removing the blank rows could be a very time-consuming process. Having to highlight each row, right-click, and click on Delete to remove each sounds painful. But by using Go to Special, we can remove all of the blank rows in our dataset in one shot. A quick way to do this is to first highlight our entire data set all the way down to the bottom by using the shortcut Ctrl-Shift and down arrow key. You may need to press the down arrow key several times to get to the bottom of that data set. Next, on our Home ribbon, we're going to navigate over to the Find and Select tool and click on Go to Special. A shortcut for Go to Special is Ctrl-G. Then we click the Special button, and now, from here, we want to select the blanks option, and then we are going to click Enter or OK on the menu. Now we can see that based on our selection, all the different rows that were blank are highlighted. Now, making sure we don't click anywhere else or we will unselect what we just selected, we can either right-click on one of these different blanks and click Delete, or my preferred way is to use the shortcut Control-. This will bring up a mini delete menu where we can specify how we want to shift these cells once we delete the rows. For this example, we are going to select the entire row. The shortcut is the letter R on the keyboard, and then click OK. Now all those blank rows have been deleted, and our data is concisely together. This is a great data cleaning technique that you may want to use if, for example, you're trying to pivot this data or reference it somewhere else. It's a best practice to remove any blank rows or spaces so that your data is all cohesive. It also makes it easier if you're going to select an entire data set, because now we could just do Control-A on our keyboard to highlight the entire data set, as it is all cohesively there. Sometimes in Excel, we want to take two or more cells and join them together. There are three main ways to do this, which include the AND sign, the concatenate function, and the text join function. Here, we will concentrate on the text join function. What's really nice about the text join function compared to the AND sign and the concatenate function, which require a space between quotes after each cell you want to combine, is that there's an argument built in for you to specify the delimiter, which refers to what symbol you want to use between your different cell references. For this example, we are going to join the cells that we have in columns C, D, and E inside of our cell in column B. All we need to do is type equals text join into our cell, and as you can see, there are three different arguments. The first one is our delimiter. This is where we tell Excel what symbol we want in between each of the cells we're combining. Let's use a space, and we must remember to put that space inside of quotation marks, as it is a string of text within our function. The second argument is ignore empty. This is where we tell Excel what we want it to do if we're highlighting an area that has empty cells. Do we want them included or do we want them excluded? In this case, we don't have any empty cells, so we just type true. Now we can highlight the different cells we're looking to combine and then close parenthesis, then click Enter. And that will combine our three cells with a space. As we can see, there are several ways to combine text together and many good uses for them. It all comes down to user preference. However, a great point about the text join is that if you have a long list of items you want to combine and you want a space in between, it is a much simpler method than the AND sign or concatenate methods. You won't have to manually add the space inside quotes for each, because text join does have that nice delimiter argument built in. Next, we will learn about the left and find functions and how we can combine them to make our left functions more dynamic. First, let's demonstrate how the left function works. In column A, we have city and state, and let's say that we want to extract just the city names and place them in column B. We can click into cell B2 and type an equal sign to start our left function. Then, when we type left, there are two different arguments. The first argument is the text we want Excel to be extracting from. In this case, we want to extract the word San Diego from cell A2. Then for the number of characters, we specify how many characters we want to extract starting from the left. A character in Excel stands for either letters, numbers, spaces, or any type of symbol. In this case, the word San Diego is 9 characters long. In our formula, we enter the number 9, and that will extract the word. One issue we can note, if we want to drag the formula down to apply to the other cities, is that each of the city names are all different lengths, so we can't use number 9 as our second argument. What we can do, instead of entering a specific character length, like the number 9 in our example, is to replace it with the find function and have it find the comma. More specifically, the character count number of the comma, to indicate how many characters to extract. If we go back to our formula for the number of characters, instead of typing number 9, we're going to use the find function. What the find function does is, it returns a number based on the particular character we are looking up. In effect, it will tell us the character count number location. In this case, we are looking up for the comma between city and state. so we enter a comma in quotation marks. Next, for within what text, this is where we tell Excel where we want to look for it. In our example, it's going to be cell A2 again. The start number argument is optional as signified by the brackets, and we don't need it for this example. Now we close parenthesis and press enter. As you can see, it extracted the word San Diego. However, it did include the comma. That's because the find function is reading the character count number of the comma. In this case, the character number is 10, therefore it's pulling up until the 10th character. In order to remove the comma, we need to reduce the character argument by 1. We can do this by adding a -1 at the end of the formula. And now, when we press enter, it will pull only the word San Diego. When we copy it down, it will adjust for each of our different city names. There you have it. If you have a list of particular items that you want to extract that are of varying lengths, this is a great function combination to use. Next, we have Control plus Enter. In column A, we have certain headings that are missing. Typically, we would want cells A3 through A5 to say Austin, cells A7 through A9 to say Miami, and so on. We essentially want to copy the title from the cell above it and fill in all blanks below it with whatever that office city name is. We could manually click on the corner and drag and copy it down, but that could take a long time if you have a long list. As an alternative, what we can do is highlight our list from A1 through B81. Next, on the home ribbon, we can navigate to the Find and Select option and click on Go to Special, or use the shortcut Ctrl-G. From here, we can select the Blanks option. Then we can either click OK or press Enter on the keyboard. Now we have all the blanks within the original array highlighted. Without clicking anywhere else, or we will unselect our selection, we can go to the formula bar and type an equal sign into our cell. We are going to reference the first cell that has the title we're looking for. In this case, it's cell A2. And now here's the key. Instead of just clicking Enter, we're going to do Control-Enter, and that will fill out all the different missing headings. This is a great technique to use if you ever get a system export where there's only one iteration of each category at the top of each section, and you want to have those filled out quickly to build a pivot table. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at the new filter function in Excel. In column A, we have a list of our different office locations. In column B, we have a list of the departments for each of those office locations. And in column C, we have how many employees are in each of those offices. Let's say we want to pull some of that data out for a particular city. In this example, we are going to be pulling the data for the city of New York. You might be thinking, can't we just put a filter on that raw data and filter out all the other offices? The answer is yes. However, that will alter the original data set, and we will no longer be able to see the other offices' data. If we want to keep that data set intact but pull out the New York City data, we can leverage Excel's new filter function. To get started with the filter function, we can go into cell E11 and type equals filter. We will get 3 different arguments. The first argument is the array. This is where we highlight the entire data set that contains the data we want to pull from. In this example, we're going to just highlight our data from cells A2 all the way down to C81. Next, we specify the criteria that we want to pull. In this case, we want every time the office says New York City for that data to be pulled out. We are going to highlight from A2 through A81, and then we are going to type an equal sign and type New York City in quotation marks. Remember, anytime we have a string of text, we want to put it in those quotes. The third argument is if empty. This one is optional, and we don't need it for this example, but essentially, this is how you tell Excel how you want to handle any empty cells in the output. In this case, we are just going to close our parenthesis. When we press Enter, we can see that it takes the data for New York City and pulls it into our table. Now, something to point out is that technically, this is a data spill, which means that if we click on any of these cells, we notice up in the formula bar that it does not contain any data. It is showing a grayed out version of our filter function. If we want to use this data and reference it somewhere else, it may be a good idea to make a pivot table off it. A good best practice is to highlight all the data and copy it as values. We can do this using the shortcut Control-C or right-click and copy. Then the shortcut Control-Alt-V will bring up the Paste special menu. We can paste the values only by typing the letter V and then click OK. Now, when we click into cell G11, we will see the number 27 in the formula, as these different data points are now actually inside of our cells and we can use them elsewhere. Have you noticed that data keeps getting bigger and bigger? Big data is here to stay, and we need to learn how to work with it in Excel. Let's take a look at a powerful pivot table tool called Pivot Table Grouping. To demonstrate this, we have some data on the left, showing office locations, order dates, and sales amounts. From this data, we have created a pivot table to the right. Something to notice about this pivot table is that we have the order dates as column headings, which is making our table very long. Let's say that we want to summarize this data by quarter instead of by date. We can do this by leveraging the Pivot Table Grouping tool. To access this tool, all we need to do is go over to the pivot table and navigate to one of the dates that we want to update. When we right-click on the date, we can navigate to the Group option. When we click on Group, we have a few different options to group by. We can unselect months and select quarters to group it by quarters. The great thing about this menu is that you can drill up or down as many layers as you'd like. We can click to select multiple layers if we like, or click again to unselect them. We can also specify up at the top in the Auto section where we want the dates to start and end. If we want to look at only 1 year of data or only a few months, we can cap the ends where we want it to be cut off. In our case, we are going to leave both of those checked on the default setting and simply click on quarters to summarize the data by quarters and click OK. When we do this, we can see that the pivot table has shrank down into a quarterly summary for each of our different row labels. As you can see, this is a great tool to use if you have a large data set with many dates and you don't want a long pivot table. It's a great way to easily summarize the data by the different date groupings. Our next productivity hack is freezing panes. Here we have some data that includes the report title and column headings in row 1 and 2, respectively. If we want to scroll down the page, as you can see, we can no longer see the report title and column headings. If we want to lock those into place, so that when we're scrolling up or down, we will always have them at the top, we can do this with the Freeze Panes tool. The first thing we need to do to freeze our panes is to highlight one row below the area we want to freeze. In this case, we are going to highlight row 3 and navigate to the View ribbon. And in the Window segment, we have the Freeze Panes button. Here, we have 3 different options. The first option is Freeze Panes, which is the one we'll be using. The second option is Freeze Top Row. And the third option is Freeze First Column. Depending on how your data is set up, one of these options may work best for you. In our case, we are going to click on the Freeze Panes button to freeze both row 1 and 2. Now to test it out, we can simply scroll down and notice how the 2 top rows stay locked in place. This is a great technique to use if you have a complicated spreadsheet with lots of different row or column headings and would like to keep them visible at all times and make your data easier to navigate. Next, let's learn how to copy and paste our visible cells only. First, let's walk through a very common mistake that many people make when they highlight particular cells and then try to copy and paste them. In this example, we have our raw data in columns A through D. We have column headings for item, order amount, order date, and sale amount. Here on our order report, we only have fields for item and sale amount, so we don't need columns B and C. What we can do to hide columns B and C is to first highlight those 2 columns by clicking on the column letter heading, and then we can either right-click on those highlighted columns and click on Hide, or my favorite shortcut is Control plus the 0 key on the keyboard, and that will hide those 2 columns. Now, this is where the common mistake comes in. You may think that you got the 2 data columns you need that match the order report, so you would highlight the data and do Control-C or right-click and copy, and then in cell F4, do Control-V or right-click and paste. But as you can see, it took our hidden columns and pasted them into our cells as well. What we can do to avoid this? First, let's do Control-Z to undo this. Next, we are going to highlight our data from A4 through D13, with our columns hidden already in B and C. Then we're going to navigate to the Home ribbon, to the Find and Select button. And here we're going to select the Go to Special option, or the shortcut, Ctrl-G. Here we are going to select the option that says Visible Cells Only, or the shortcut for this is the letter Y. And when we click Enter or OK, it will copy that selection. Now, without clicking anywhere else, or it will unselect what we just selected, if we do Ctrl-C or right-click and copy, we will notice those little dancing ants and the green lines around there going up against each other, showing that there's two different pieces highlighted. With that copied, we're going to click into cell F4 and do Ctrl-V or right-click and paste, and now those two will paste in nicely. If we want to reformat, we can highlight the table data and go over to the Borders option on the Home menu and select the thick outside borders. And there we have our data nicely pasted into our order report. And there you have it. These are 10 great productivity hacks you can add to your Excel toolbox. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. More helpful videos will be coming soon. Thank you for watching.